Robby Stanley, Adam Vingan, Ryan Porth here with you on this Thursday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Going to have Scott Ramsey from the Nashville Sports Council coming up to begin the 8 o'clock hour here in about 30 minutes. So looking forward to that conversation with him. Right now, talking Predators and some moves still to be made this offseason. And Adam, in the last segment, you brought up something that I think is very interesting, and that is the fact that the Predators have never, in the history of their franchise, had a 40-goal scorer. They've never had a 35-goal scorer in the history of their franchise. The single-season record is 34 goals, set by Victor Arvidsson a couple of years ago in 58 games, which is pretty incredible to watch what Victor Arvidsson was able to do that year. But I want to kind of extend that conversation even further because, I mean, the goal scoring is certainly a huge part of it, and you've got to be gifted in that area to be considered a quote-unquote elite forward, but playmaking also a part of it as well. Like, I look through the history of the Predators franchise, and they have had a lot of very good forwards. Mm-hmm. Philip Forsberg is a very good forward.
Yep.
I think Ryan Johansson at the top of his game was a very good forward.
Yep.
Alex Radulov, I mean, Steve Sullivan, Patrick Hornqvist, you can keep going up and down the list. In my mind, throughout the history of their franchise, the Predators have had one elite forward.
Paul Kariya.
And that is Paul Kariya. Paul Kariya in 2005 and 06 had 85 points. That is the single-season franchise record for points. Followed it up with 76 the next year. 31 goals, 24 goals, but 54 assists. Over 50 assists each year for Paul Kariya.
And he was out of his prime.
And he wasn't even in his prime anymore.
He was in, his early 30s when he played here?
Right. He was still very good.
Yeah, Paul Kariya is a Hall of Fame player for a reason.
Exactly. So that in my definition of an elite forward, the Predators have had one in their history of the franchise.
And he was a free agent?
Yeah, he came in via free agency.
Right. Couldn't remember if it was a trade or free agency.
Why do you think it's been so difficult for the Predators to find one of these elite forwards? I mean, it almost seems like they grow elite defensemen on trees around here. Like there's elite defensemen throughout the league and that have come through the league and have since retired that you can trace directly to the Predators, and they've been very good at drafting those. They've drafted some elite goaltenders as well. We'll see whether or not UC Saros is the next in line there. How did they go about fixing this problem at forward that's been a problem really throughout the history of their entire franchise at this point?
Well, while we were on break, I went into the NHL.com stats page, sorted the points this season for forwards from most to least, and I inputted their biographical information to look at where they were drafted. So here it is. Connor McDavid, 105 points this season as I hit myself with the microphone. First overall pick. Leon Draisaitl, 84 points. Third pick overall. Brad Marchand, 69 points. 71st overall, which is a third-round pick. Mitch Marner, fourth pick. Patrick Kane, first pick. Mikko Rantanen, 10th pick. Austin Matthews, first pick. Nathan McKinnon, first pick. Mark Scheifele, seventh pick. Sidney Crosby, first pick. That's your top 10. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the top 10 scorers in the NHL this season by points were number one picks.
Yeah.
With the exception of Brad Marchand, who was a third-round pick, all 9 of the 10 top scorers in the NHL for forwards this season were first-round picks, were lottery picks. The Predators have never been, well, not never, but have mostly not. Jones would be available when the Predators picked fourth.
Right.
So the top 4 in that draft, Nathan McKinnon,
Nathan McKinnon, Alex Barkov, Jonathan Drouin, and then Seth Jones.
And Seth Jones. Now, we know that Nathan McKinnon and Alex Barkov have had fabulous careers so far.
Yep.
Nathan McKinnon, a perennial MVP candidate. Alex Barkov, Selke Trophy winner this season. Incredible player. Jonathan Drouin, he's been hit or miss. And then, of course, Seth Jones. I mean, you weren't going to pass on Seth Jones.
No.
And to your point, think about the defensemen in the NHL that the Predators have been able to acquire via the draft. It's a who's who. Not just the players that are currently on the team, Roman Josi, Matthias Ekholm, Ryan Ellis, Shea Weber, Ryan Suter, Seth Jones, Sam Girard, Kimmo Timonen. The list goes on. Well, Kimmo Timonen was he an expansion
Yep.
draft pick. Yeah, but it still kind of counts. I mean, he was a relative unknown when he got picked. The list goes on and on and on. I mean, this is to me is the most interesting statistic, and I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head. Do you happen to know who the leading scorer, not just with the Predators, but throughout his entire career, the leading scorer among forwards drafted by the Predators in the NHL?
My guess would be Patrick Hornquist, but I don't know.
Last I checked, and it could have changed, it was Scott Hartnell.
Okay.
Scott Hartnell,
that makes sense.
It has the most points NHL-wise in his career, not just with the Predators, but most points by a forward drafted by the Predators. And we all love Scott Hartnell, right?
Sure.
Scott Hartnell's a great guy, had a great career, but would you consider Scott Hartnell an elite forward? No. And that's the issue. I mean, I can't think of a way that the Predators are going to be able to get that forward unless they tank. I really don't. I mean, they don't become available regularly in trades. They don't get to the free agent market. So, to me, I know that perhaps maybe this sounds extreme, but to me, I feel like the only way they're going to be able to do it is if they tank. I mean, am I being incredibly, unrealistic here when I say that?
Well, I don't think so. I think the argument to that would be, well, what about a trade? What about bringing in a guy like Jack Eichel, who could be on a move this offseason? What about bringing in someone who knows whether or not Mitch Marner will be available this offseason? I would find both of those scenarios to be very unlikely for the Predators because, quite frankly, there are other teams around the league that are better positioned from an asset standpoint to get those deals done if those are going to take place this offseason. But we've seen David Poile before. He's not afraid to make some trades. Just the trades that he's made, they have never resulted in an elite forward coming back. Maybe something that you thought could be, but they never played out that way to be an elite forward.
So there's one theory that is floated among Predators fans, and we've also talked about it, not just on the show, but just normal conversations among the three of us. This idea that previously productive forwards come to Nashville and are no longer productive. Kyle Turris, Matt Duchene, Mikael Granlund. Those are the three off the top of my head. Do you think there's something to that? Is it something about the way the team plays? Is it something about the forwards that the team is identifying? How much stock do you put into that?
It's difficult because there have been different coaching staffs when this has all happened, right? I mean, it's not like you've been dealing with the same coaching staff or the same system. So, Peter Laviolette, his system, and John Hines' system are different. And so it's not like they're utilizing the same thing. I'll be honest with you, Matt Duchene, to me, has looked pretty much the same, whether it's been in Peter Laviolette's system or John Hines' system. And that's been not very good. That's what he's looked like. Now, on the other side, I mean, Mikael Granlund was pretty much a ghost with Peter Laviolette here, and he's been awesome ever since John Hines took over. So, look, I'm not saying the system isn't important and that the coaching staff, maybe you click better with a certain system or a certain way of doing things. I think that absolutely happens. But I think just to paint the entire picture that way, I think that's a little too simplistic.
Yeah.
Kyle Turris, I think Kyle Turris has just totally fallen apart as a player. I don't know if it's because he came here, but I mean he's gone to Edmonton and at one point this year got put on waivers.
Right.
So Kyle Turris to me, he's maybe not even an NHL player anymore.
Did he sign was it a 1 or a 2 year contract with Edmonton?
I can't remember. I have to go look.
But if he signs a 1 year contract, if it was a 1 year contract,
he could be out of the league.
He could be out of the league.
Yeah.
I mean, look at James Neal. I mean, James Neal, his first season in Vegas. Remember, James Neal scored 20 goals every season for the first 10 or 11 years of his career. Now, that he went to Vegas, had a good season, another 20-goal season, the year they went to the Stanley Cup final. Then he goes to Calgary, doesn't fit there. They trade him for Milan Lucic, who also needed a change of scenery, and he's been in and out of the lineup for he was on waivers too, I think.
Yep.
At one point, So, is it so? It could be that the Predators are identifying the wrong forwards. What do you think, Poor?
Well, I think it's too simplistic to say that they have to tank to find one of these guys.
Yeah, I know. I've been extreme.
You can find most of them do come in the top 5 or 10 of the draft, but you can find these guys in later first rounds.
Nikita Kucherov
in the second round. Like, you draft Salomaki like 7 picks before Kucherov, or 6 picks, whatever it was. Yeah. You drafted Kevin Fiala and traded him in the same first round where David Pastrnak was drafted like 10 to 15 picks later. Braden Point went undrafted. Like, there are elite forwards out there that aren't just exclusive to the top 5 or 10 picks, where the Preds have had opportunities to pick these guys and they don't, or they don't develop forwards into being an elite forward. That's been their history.
Well, that's what makes, and we'll continue this conversation on the other side, but where I want to go with this is, like, Philip Forsberg, to me, skill set wise, it's there to be an elite forward. Like, I watch his skill set. He can skate well.
Yeah.
He's got great hands. Mm-hmm. He's got a really good shot that's a lot different coming off the stick than I think a lot of players in this league. And we've always asked the question, like, can he be a 40-goal guy? Can he be a point-per-game guy? And he hasn't. Like, some of that's due to injury, but some of that is just due to streakiness. And is that more of a Philip Forsberg thing, or is this a problem with the Predators where they just can't seem to develop forwards to reach their top level? I think that's an interesting question. We'll get to that coming up next. How do the Predators fix this problem of not having elite forwards? Let us know on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Adam Vingan, Ryan Porth here with you on this Thursday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, discussing the Predators. How can they find an elite forward that other teams seem to be able to find with regularity? And I've defined it. I think the Predators have had one elite forward throughout the history of their franchise. That has been Paul Kariya. I know some people would say, well, okay, what about Peter Forsberg?
He wasn't the
Peter
same
Forsberg
Peter
was
Forsberg.
here for like 17 games.
And he wasn't,
the same guy.
Peter Forsberg.
So I do not put him in the elite forward category.
Another
During
Hall
his
of
time with the Predators.
another Hall of Fame player,
Of course.
but did not have the same impact that Paul Kariya did.
Exactly. So obviously this has been an issue, and you mentioned maybe the way to fix it is you've got to pick higher in the draft. And to the Predators' credit, you know, they've been in the playoffs, I believe, 14 of the last 19 years? I mean, it's been an impressive run that they've been able to go on, making the playoffs basically every year at this point. So when you do that, you're not going to have a high draft pick. I mean, they picked 4th overall in 2013. A lot of people thought in the mock drafts that Barkov was going to be the one that slid to 4. I mean, it was either going to be McKinnon or Jones going 1-2, Druin at 3, and then Barkov going to 4. And that's just not the way the draft played out. Barkov ends up going number 2. Seth Jones slides all the way to 4, and the Predators at that point, you're not passing up a guy like Seth Jones in the draft. So not very often have the Predators had opportunities to pick near the top part of the draft. So if it's not going to be that, how do you go about fixing this if you're David Poile and the Predators? Because obviously, I mean, some of this is that, and some of it is you just not been in position to pick high in these drafts. But to Porth's point in the last segment, it's not like all of these forwards that are the top guys in the league come in the top part of the draft. A lot of them do. Maybe even the majority of them do. But you can find some elite level forwards later in the draft, and the Predators, for whatever reason, they've just not been able to do that to this point.
I'm looking at the cap-friendly page. Earlier in the show, we were talking about the Tampa Bay Lightning and how they've been constructed, and we were talking about all of the top players they have that were drafted forward-wise, and a couple that were undrafted and then later signed. So this is the Predators list. Matt Duchene, free agent signing. Ryan Johansson was a trade.
Yep.
Philip Forsberg was a trade, but you can
He's
argue,
essentially homegrown.
yes, he's essentially homegrown. Colton Sissons, drafted. Luke Cunnin, traded. Rocco Grimaldi, signed. Calle Yarncroke, traded. Nick Cousins, signed. Trennan, drafted. Granlund signed. Hall is signed. Tolvanen drafted. Matthew Olivier was undrafted and signed. I would be curious to look at the top forwards from every team and look at how many were signed versus drafted versus traded. I mean, Victor Arvidsson was drafted and homegrown. And to your point, Philip Forsberg, although a trade, was basically homegrown because he was not an NHL player when the Capitals traded him to the Predators. But that, I mean, it is an issue. Does the organization, that's the question, is like, why has the organization been so good at identifying defensemen but not forwards? I mean, I'm not sure that's a question that even they can answer.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it's not a good business model to have to build your team through trades and free agent signings. Preferably, you're drafting players. But the Predators have not had that luck from the forward standpoint.
So we brought up Forsberg in the last segment in terms of a guy that can be that, or we thought could be that at one time. Like, I see the skill set. I think it's there. I just, at this point, if we've not seen it yet, it's tough for me to believe that all of a sudden Philip Forsberg is just going to turn into an elite guy. Like, I think he's very good, and there's nothing wrong with Philip Forsberg. He's a very good player. He is not an elite player. I think at times he's got elite level skills. Now, I remember talking to PK Subban during his time here, and look, PK Subban, he went a little extra sometimes, and there was a little bit of hyperbole in what he said, but I mean, he told me multiple times, Philip Forsberg, he said the most talented guy in the league. Now, that's kind of like Delaney Walker yesterday saying that Anthony Ferguson is going to be elite. Do I really believe that PK Subban thought that Philip Forsberg was the most talented guy in the league? No. But I think him saying something like that illustrates that they kind of see what we see too, and that is he's extremely talented. He can do things with the puck that not many players around the league can do. Like, they don't really have another guy like that. I think Philip Forsberg may be the closest they've had since Paul Kariya to being that elite level guy. I guess you're hoping, if you're a Predators fan, that either Eeli Tolvanen or Philip Tomasino turns in to one of these elite forwards. But based on the track record, at this point, I think if you're a Predators fan, you'll probably believe that when you see it at this point. And look, I think Tolvanen specifically, we'll have to wait and see on Tomasino and what he looks like at the NHL level. I think Tolvanen has an elite level shot. I don't know that his all-around game is ever going to get to the point where he is, quote-unquote, an elite level forward.
Probably not. And to my previous point about, forwards drafted by the Predators. So Scott Hartnell, 707 points in 1,249 NHL games. He is the leading scorer among forwards drafted by the Predators. Second was David Legwand, 618 points in 1,136 NHL games. Third, Martin Erat, 545 points in 881 games. Patrick Hornquist, 512 points in 814 games. Craig Smith, 362 points in 715 games. None of those players would you consider to be elite players. They're all good. They're all good. Alex Radulov was after Craig Smith at 346 points in 453 games. But then after that, you've got Colin Wilson, you've got Scotty Upshaw, all solid players, not the type of players that you would consider to be elite. So, and then you look at that same list, you've got Ryan Suter, Shea Weber, Roman Josi, Dan Hamhuis, Seth Jones, Ryan Ellis. Like, those guys are at some point either are or were in the elite category.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's a conundrum. It really is. It's not an easy issue to solve. And I don't know how they're going. I really don't know what. The other thing that's interesting is, you mentioned Jack Eichel. You mentioned, Mitch Marner has been in trade rumors, even though the powers that be in Toronto seem to squash the idea that they were going to break up their top four. Yeah. John Tavares, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and William Nylander. We did an article the other day about the five superstar players that could be on the move. What assets do the Predators have that would be attractive to other teams? I mean, we talked about Ryan Ellis. We had a conversation about Ryan Ellis yesterday. Ryan Ellis is a great defenseman. Your mileage may vary on Ellis. We talked about this, how he's an incredibly polarizing player within the fan base. He's in his early 30s. He's got an injury history. He's not, even Matthias Ekholm. I mean, people, we talked about how he was at one point the number one player on the Athletics big board heading into the trade deadline. Matthias Ekholm in his early 30s. He's not going to fetch you Mitch Marner. He's not going to fetch you Jack Eichel. They don't have those prospects. They don't have those young players that they can move. The assets are not there for the Predators to make this trade. Think about what the Los Angeles Kings can offer a team that's been heavily rumored to be involved in the Jack Eichel sweepstakes.
The Rangers.
Yep. They have top prospects. They have top young players. Could someone like Quentin Byfield or Alex Turcotte be, someone that could, fetch someone Jack Eichel? Absolutely, because the Kings expect those players to be the next generation. And who's that for the Predators? Do we really think Eeli Tolvanen is going to be a frontline forward for this team for the next 10 years? I mean, he could be, but is he the kind of player that turns into Jack Eichel? No. Or not even in terms of his play on the ice or the type of player that you would use to get Jack Eichel. They just don't have the assets. Quite frankly, they're stuck. They don't have. When you look at the Predators themselves, I know Port said I was being a bit extreme, and I am not one for hyperbole. Wink, wink. I think the only way that this team is going to get that forward is to tank. I really do.
When we come back, we will be joined by Scott Ramsey from the Nashville Sports Council. All kinds of events coming up, including the Music City Grand Prix as well. And we need your help. We'll explain more coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode live from the wholesaling studios, powered by RumbleOn.com here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Hour number 3 of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan in today for Joe Rexrode, who is still on vacation out in California. Ryan Porth here with you today as well on this Thursday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Scheduled to be joined shortly by Scott Ramsey of the Nashville Sports Council, president and CEO of the Nashville Sports Council. So looking forward to that conversation coming up with him here in just a few minutes. And Adam, it's going to be interesting. There's a lot of big events coming up in our city. We'll get to the Stadium Series between the Predators and the now two-time defending Stanley Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning. That's coming up next February. The United States versus Canada and the World Cup qualifying match coming up on September the 5th at Nissan Stadium. The Music City Grand Prix as well. Lots of big events coming up here in our city. And to help us talk more about that, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Scott Ramsey, president and CEO of the Nashville Sports Council. Scott, what's going on, man? How we doing?
Hey, good morning, Robby. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to hear your voice. Thanks for taking time to join us this morning, Scott. I know we've got a cool event I know coming up with the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, which is set to take place August the 6th through the 8th. What can you tell us about this event, how it all came together, and maybe some needs that we still have that our listeners can help us out with in advance of that weekend?
Well, I think there's a lot of excitement about it, Robby. It's an inaugural event. I know it's going to be the first of many great successes in the summer for IndyCar in Nashville. And, you know, I think a lot of kudos go to Matt Cruz and Jason Rittenberry and Chris Parker, who've worked for years to get the Grand Prix course approved and set, and all the funding in place with the investors that they have lined up. And then the IndyCar sanction and get that put together. They've worked years on it, and I just think it's going to be a really exciting inaugural event for us in August. And things are going well, and we're really looking forward to seeing the event. It's going to be unique. Certainly the little over 2-mile course going over Korean Veterans Boulevard Bridge and back over and around the stadium is going to be a tremendous event, and we're looking forward to it. You're right. We still need some help. We're looking for some volunteers. We need a lot of volunteers to support the event over the 3 days, and anybody out there that wants to be involved with the event and come out and help us support it and represent Nashville, we're still looking for some people.
Yeah, and you can, if you want to check that out and volunteer, you can register at NashvilleSports.com. Registration includes meals during your shifts, a hat, a T-shirt, lapel pin, lanyard, and 2 volunteer polos as well. So if you want to check that out, you can register at NashvilleSports.com. And I know with the race coming back to the Super Speedway a couple of weeks ago with NASCAR, Scott, which was a rousing success, and now with the Music City Grand Prix coming as well, Nashville dipping their toe back in the racing pond here. I think that's been very popular, gone over very well thus far.
Yeah, Robbie, I think it was always a matter of when, not if. And, I think when you saw the Super Speedway and the investment that Dover Downs had, and really it sat pretty idle for 10-plus years, and the reinvestment that they put in, not only financially, but to move one of their races out of Dover there, I think that's just going to continue to get better as well. And certainly NASCAR's presence in Nashville had always been something that, we all felt like was the right fit. We just couldn't kind of all put all the pieces together. And now I think with Dover's investment out there, that will be successful as well. And certainly IndyCar, they had an earlier presence in the early 2000s out at Super Speedway, and now to come down and do a road course in downtown Nashville is going to be pretty dynamic.
Scott Ramsey of the Nashville Sports Council with us on Robby and Rexrode, ESPN 102.5 The Game. Scott, it was announced a couple of weeks ago that the Nashville Predators will face the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning in a Stadium Series game in February at Nissan Stadium. Please take us behind the scenes on how all that came together and what you expect from that event in terms of what the city and the Predators will do to make it a marquee event.
Well, I appreciate that, Adam. I'm excited about it. I think we've always been the right market for a Stadium Series event. I know we took a hard look at the New Year's Day event, but with the New Year's Eve and the Music City Bowl and the Titan schedule, the facility turn was going to be really difficult to make that work. And the Stadium Series in February now gives us a clean runway to really engage that whole east side of the river and really make it a dynamic setup. I think it's going to be widely successful. Certainly the Predators get all the congratulations there working with NHL to put those dates together, and certainly have the Stanley Cup champions coming in, and on our home turf will be an exciting matchup. But it's kind of exciting from us just to kind of coming out of COVID, thinking about getting back into the event business. Certainly, the Stadium Series recent announcement with the Grand Prix inaugural event, and it's selling really well. And we just announced, USA Canada soccer in their first game for the men's national team in September. We'll have 2 rock and roll marathons, one in November that's been delayed from April, one back in April. We've got the U.S. Figure Skating Championships, which is the Olympic qualifying event, first week of January this year, and certainly get back to our bowl game with our new sponsor in TransPerfect for December 30th. So the SEC Women's Tournament, basketball tournament comes back in March. So between August and April, we've got 7 or 8 events that do what we've been doing well in our city, which is bring high-profile events here with a big economic impact, a lot of tourism revenue, and a lot of media coverage. So on top of the regular seasons, I think we're really ready to bounce back out of COVID and really create the energy and excitement via sports that we've seen over the past 20 years.
Scott Ramsey from the Nashville Sports Council on the line with us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And Scott, as you are well aware, the landscape of college sports and college football specifically changing very rapidly before our eyes with name, image, and likeness laws coming into effect and expansion to a 12-team college football playoff as well. What have been your thoughts watching all of this transpire basically at the same time? What do you think of expanding to a 12-team college football playoff, and what do you think that could mean for bowl games throughout the country, especially here in our very own town here with the Music City Bowl as well?
Well, Robby, the real answer is no one knows, and I think that creates obviously challenges because it's hard to plan against a moving target of a lot of things. I think there's still a lot of questions. Certainly, the 12-team expansion plan has been presented to the commissioners and ultimately the presidents that make up the College Football Playoff Management Committee. I think the biggest question is going to be on when the timing for implementation is going to be. Is that going to be before the end of the current contract cycle, which is another 5 years for us with the SEC Big Ten, and that's consistent with the national set of contracts? Will it be before then, and we're going to have to redo everything, or is it going to just dovetail right at the end of that 5 years? And that allows you to kind of normally go into a normal negotiation cycle. So, we just finished a negotiation cycle to create the 6-year matchup with the Big Ten SEC, added TransPerfect as a new title sponsor. So the unknown really is the timing of the implementation. Certainly they're going to have to tweak the modeling and come to agreement on how to make up the 12, but we're hoping for the latter to segue into the 5-year, because I think that would give us a chance with the obvious plans for a renovated Nissan Stadium, all the East Bank development, Oracle coming in, really gives us a chance to step up and start talking about the national championship game. If it happens before then and they start locking in long term, that would delay that opportunity for Nashville. So, there's a lot of questions left out there, and certainly, we're anxiously awaiting kind of a real timeline for when some of those decisions are going to be made, which could be this fall or it could be delayed, as we've seen, just because of a lot of the moving parts. So, I think the bowl system in general served college football well. It's unique. I think you just look at Nashville and in the late 90s, that was a week that we had zero tourism. Yeah. And we built a brand new stadium. We had no shame about creating an event that we thought brought tourists to town, and it's done incredibly well. This will be our 24th year, and we're averaging 35 to 40,000 out-of-towners here for a few days, and really utilizing the city-owned facility in a maximum way to engage. So we've built a New Year's Eve event behind it. That's one of our great weeks now. And, from the business side, that's served our city well. Will it continue to have that kind of prominence on a national scene is undetermined right now, given how the structure is going to be at the top and how will that impact the bowl system overall. So we'll see, but certainly I think Nashville has proven itself as an incredible sports destination for major events. We've seen the draft, the NHL All-Star Game, the Women's Final Four, a bowl game, certainly all the music events that we've done, and hopefully, World Cup coming as well. So we're excited. We stand ready, and we'll kind of monitor the situation as we go forward.
Well, and Scott, you brought up hopefully the World Cup coming. There is a World Cup qualifying match at Nissan Stadium between the United States and Canada coming up on September 5th. And, with Nashville SC in here now, and there have been some huge soccer matches here at Nissan Stadium before as well. This has become quite the city for soccer in the United States. What do you expect out of this matchup coming up between the United States and Canada, and the environment that could be there for Nissan Stadium on September the 5th?
Well, Adam, I think it's a chance again for Nashville to kind of prove itself as a worthy host for some major matches in the World Cup. I think there's a lot of politics going into that. It's a North American platform of host cities. Certainly we fit in the central time zone, which is one of the things you look at as far as rotating around. But, I think this is going to be one that we're going to want to see great attendance again, and we've had that. I think the local community, the regional travel for those events have been good. And if we can, again, kind of fill up Nissan Stadium for this match, that I think it'll be another opportunity for us to, promote Nashville as one of the major sites and destinations for the World Cup in 26 when they make that decision.
Absolutely, and a lot of great stuff coming up in our city. Scott Ramsey from the Nashville Sports Council has been our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. And if you'd like to volunteer for the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, just check out NashvilleSports.com. Volunteers can register there, and we need your help with that coming up here in just a few weeks. It's going to be a great event, a great IndyCar race coming up in our city. Scott, thanks so much for taking time to join us this morning. Hope you and the family are doing well, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Thanks, Robby. Appreciate you having me on, and we'll talk to you soon. See you guys.
Absolutely. Scott Ramsey, President and CEO of the Nashville Sports Council, has been our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. When we come back, we'll react a little bit to what Scott Ramsey had to say there. Lots of events coming up in our city. What is the one event that Nashville's not yet hosted that you'd most like to see? Let us know on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Later this morning, it's your chance to participate in the Nashville SC Pick to Click, brought to you by Camarena Tequila. If you guess correctly which player scores a goal in the game tonight, you win a prize pack and a 4-pack of tickets to an upcoming Nashville SC home game. We'll have that opportunity coming up for you later this morning, right around 9:15. So make sure you're tuned in for that. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, ESPN 102.5 The Game. Thanks to Scott Ramsey from the Nashville Sports Council for joining us in the last segment. Lots of cool things coming up in our city. IndyCar races, outdoor hockey game next year. Nashville checking off a lot of boxes of hosting big-time events. And that got me thinking, what is the one event that Nashville has not yet hosted that you would love to see? There are different options that could be out there, and Scott talked about kind of the schedule now in college football as well, kind of up in the air with the college football playoff expansion proposal on the table to move from 4 teams to 12 teams. We'll see what happens on that front. I would expect that gets approved here, maybe even as soon as the fall, and we'll see what sort of timeline they operate under the bowl schedule with the contract currently in place. But could there ever be a point with some possible renovations to Nissan Stadium that Nashville gets in the mix for the Final Four or for the college football playoff or for even maybe a Super Bowl somewhere down the line? I think all of these things are on the table and questions that fans around here are eager to learn the answers to. So, Adam Vingan, I ask you, lots of options on the table, Frozen 4, I guess, included as well. Of the events, the big-time events that Nashville has not yet hosted, what intrigues you the most? What would you most like to see the city here host?
The Nathan's hot dog eating contest.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. But that would be pretty cool. But it's Coney Island, so that's never going to happen.
It's not going to move.
But that would be fun. There are some good choices. There are some obvious ones. You think of course, the Super Bowl. We are equipped as a city to handle that. We saw the NFL draft and how successful that was, and that was just the draft. That was just to watch players be picked, let alone actually hosting the Super Bowl. As a college basketball fan, I would love to see the Final Four in Nashville. We've seen SEC tournaments here. We've seen first and second round matchups in Nashville. Has Nashville ever hosted a regional, like the Sweet 16, Elite 8 games? I don't think so.
I don't think so. No.
I mean, the Final Four is now regularly hosted in football stadiums, basically. And we do not have a football stadium with a roof. So that might disqualify us from hosting it. But if there were any way to get a Final Four here, I would love that personally. Bridgestone Arena could easily host, a Sweet 16 Elite 8, and I would take that too. But I would love to see a Final Four in Nashville. I would think that would be so much fun.
We've got a texter on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Major League Baseball, their answer. So Major League Baseball also on the table as well.
But that would be having a team here.
That is correct.
There are no Major League Baseball events that are on neutral sites, right?
I think they're playing in a cornfield coming up.
They are playing in the cornfield, the Field of Dreams.
Yeah, but no, not normally.
Yeah, so I'm thinking of neutral site events, or All-Star games. We've had an NHL All-Star game here. The Pro Bowl is usually is it in Florida now? It was always in Hawaii. I think
they've been moving it.
They've been moving it. I mean, maybe the Pro Bowl. Yeah, to me, the Final Four is number one on my list. I think a lot of fans and listeners and texters would say the Super Bowl. That would be my guess.
Well, and as a texter points out, we've had a Final Four here. It was the women's Final Four back in 2014.
Okay.
But the men's Final Four, as you said, it's typically now in football stadiums.
I should have differentiated.
Well, it's typically it's typically now in football stadiums. So, like if Nashville is going to get in the mix for that, it's going to require a renovation to Nissan Stadium, and not just a renovation. It's going to require a renovation that has
basically a new stadium,
a retractable roof. And I don't, I look at that stadium right now. I don't see how you can just put a roof on it. So
no,
it would probably require either a new stadium or some fancy technology I don't know about. One of the two.
Right. We think about the Arizona Cardinals Stadium in Glendale. The State Farm Stadium, formerly University of Phoenix Stadium, has hosted multiple Final Fours. The Colts Stadium, what's that called? I forgot.
Lucas Oil.
Lucas Oil, yeah. So I was about to say the RCA Dome. It's been a minute since
it's been a while
since they played in the RCA Dome. Indianapolis, of course, this year the entire NCAA tournament was based in the Indianapolis area, basically, or the state of Indiana.
Yep.
Tropicana Field has hosted the Final Four, though that's a baseball stadium, not a football stadium. But yeah, the fact that we do not have a large stadium with a roof, will basically disqualify us from hosting a men's Final Four.
Ryan Porth, as you look at the options, and Scott Ramsey laid out a few of those in the last segment, including maybe some World Cup matches coming as well. What event has Nashville not yet hosted that you are either most looking forward to or would most like to see the city host at this point?
Everything.
Sure.
Bring everything to Nashville.
A college football playoff?
See, I just don't know if anything like that or a Super Bowl or a Final Four is ever going to be realistic until there's a roof on that football stadium.
Yeah.
Honestly. Because there are other big cities with beautiful stadiums that cost billions of dollars that are a better fit for those events. They just are. As much as Nashville has burst on the scene in the last decade with big events, that is going to the next level that probably won't happen until there's a roof on that stadium.
Well, and I think that, to your point, I think that's the one holdup. Like, I think Nashville's got everything else. I mean, the hotel space is, as we know, there's a new hotel going up every day around here. I mean, the restaurant, the entertainment scene speaks for itself here in the city. So all the other boxes, I think, are checked.
Right.
It's just if you're hosting a college football playoff game, in January here, we all know this if you've been here for any length of time, it could be 75 and sunny. Like, the weather could be great for a college football playoff game. Or it could be 23 degrees and snowing. Like, we just don't know what the weather's going to be. That's what makes the Stadium Series game pretty interesting, too.
Yeah.
Right.
The next 5 sites of the NCAA men's Final Four. New Orleans this season at the Superdome. In 2023, Energy Stadium in Houston. 2024, State Farm Stadium in Phoenix/Glendale. 2025, the Alamo Dome in San Antonio. And in 2026, Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis.
See? Final Four ain't coming here until there's a roof on the stadium. Now, more realistically, a Sweet 16 and Elite 8?
Yes.
If they could score one of those, that would be pretty sweet.
Yeah.
If they could get the World Cup to play a few games here in 2026.
Yeah.
They're going to decide that here in the relatively soon, future. And words are hard. So
more cornhole championships.
Sure. Yeah.
I love watching that stuff.
Hot dog eating contests.
I'm telling you, they should take it on the road.
But I would also love to see some of the events that have come here in the past come back.
Yeah.
The NHL draft.
I'd love to see the NHL draft back
would
here.
Be awesome here.
The NFL draft. Now, look, the NFL draft's going to be back here. And I don't think it's going to be that long before it's back here. I know that, look, there are 32 teams, and you've got to, if they're going to start moving things around, you've got to make sure that priority is given to, I guess, new places and new cities.
But who wants to go to Cleveland again?
Well, and
when you could go to Nashville. No disrespect to Cleveland.
Think back to that scene. People were blown away by the NFL draft here in Nashville. Like, I don't think it'll be that long before they're back. And, the 2003 draft.
That was the NHL draft.
It was the NHL draft. It was, number one, maybe the greatest draft itself in NHL history, certainly in the conversation. But the draft itself was awesome. And think about how much the city has changed since the 2003 NHL draft. The 16 All-Star game was awesome. So I think you're going to start to see some of those events that we've had come back. Like, I don't think it'll be that much longer before the NHL is back here doing something, whether it's the draft or another All-Star game.
Yeah, realistically, a World Cup game is on the table, I would think. Hosting the NFL draft again, hosting the NHL draft again, hosting another NHL All-Star game. But in terms of things that have not happened, I think number one on my list, realistically, would be a Sweet 16 Elite 8 situation. I would love the Final Four, but as I mentioned in all of those stadiums, those are football stadiums with retractable roofs, and we don't have one of those, and we need one of those.
The Frozen Four would be cool.
Yeah, the Frozen Four would be cool, yes.
But I think the next big one that could be announced is that World Cup site when they announce the North American sites, and that would be pretty epic if they got, what would it be, like 3 or 4 matches within the World Cup in 2026. That would be amazing.
Ryan Wilkerson tweeted at us and said, college football national title game would be so awesome.
It would, but again, you're going to need a roof.
Where's
to make
the roof?
That happen.
The ceilings on
The ceiling is the roof.
The ceiling is the roof.
You'd get Jordan in here, that's for sure.
We'll just have people like hold a large tarp over the top of the upper bowl of Nissan Stadium.
We'll continue this conversation when we come back. Got a lot of your thoughts to get to on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Which event that we've not hosted yet here in this city would you most like to see come to Nashville here in the not-too-distant future? We'll get to that coming up next. Right now, though, go to theGameNashville.com to check out Nashville's best deals. Deals happening now include a $50 Bad Axe Throwing Nashville gift card for only $25. Buy one, get one free for Beach Bend Park and Splash Lagoon. You can get yours now while they last at theGameNashville.com. We'll be right back here on Robby and Rexrode, ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan, Ryan Porth here with you on this Thursday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Streaming live on YouTube, on Twitch, and on Periscope today and every day here on ESPN 102.5 The Game for your viewing pleasure. Right now, talking Nashville sports, what sporting event has the city not yet hosted that you would most like to see? We got a lot to get to on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Before we do that, though, Bob on Twitter says, what about WrestleMania?
I can't believe I overlooked WrestleMania.
I can't believe you did either. I thought that would be the first thing out of your mouth.
Now, if Rexrode were here, he would say, wrestling's not a sport. But they do
well, wrestling's not. But
it's
okay.
Sports entertainment, as they like to call it.
There you go.
But that's a great point because WrestleMania is hosted in football stadiums, and they don't need roofs. I mean, WrestleMania this past spring was at Raymond James Stadium.
Yep.
It was supposed to be at Raymond James Stadium last year, but because of the pandemic, it was basically in front of nobody at the WWE's training facility in Orlando. But when WWE comes to town for a WrestleMania, they're there for a week, and there are multiple events. They have a fan what do you call it? A fan fest of sorts, where you can get autographs, and they have matches, and similar to the fan fest that you saw at the NHL All-Star Game at Music City Center, which would be a perfect spot for it. The last couple of years, WrestleMania has been spread out over 2 nights. So it was Saturday and Sunday. So you get 2 nights, and usually you get 1 or 2 television, one of the weekly television shows the day after. So that's it's a week-long event. And you know me, I would absolutely be all over WrestleMania.
You would.
So great call, Bob. I'm so sorry I didn't realize that.
Chris texting and said, I had WrestleMania typed out, but I didn't send it. How about the MLS All-Star Game?
Well, you should have typed WrestleMania.
I would imagine the MLS All-Star Game.
That would be fun.
It's got to be in the plans, I would think, with Nashville being a new team. By the way, stay tuned at 9 o'clock. Going to have Tony Husband, voice of Nashville SC, on television, join us. Some big news for Nashville SC yesterday. We'll get to that coming up at 9 o'clock. I think there are a lot of different ways that you can go with these answers. We've got a texter on the text line that says PGA Tour. Would like to see a PGA Tour event come here. And be played here in the Nashville area. I wonder what golf course.
Yeah, which course would that be?
I don't know.
But that would be fun. I went to a PGA Tour event one time when I was younger. It was cool.
I believe I think it's the Grove.
Yeah.
Down
Franklin?
Off of 840. I believe that could be a potential for a PGA Tour event in the next couple years.
Yeah.
That would be fun. It would be really cool if it was a major. But it probably won't be.
Or an event where the big players come play.
Yeah.
Not one of the events where all the tier 3 and 4 golfers go play in the PGA. If it's one that brings John Rahm and Dustin Johnson and DeChambeau, all them, I would go every year.
Sure. That would be fun. I went to one PGA Tour event as a youngster at Kings Mill in Williamsburg, Virginia, and I think the most notable golfer was David Duval.
Yeah.
Which at the time was, kind of a big deal. David Duval, a solid golfer, but it wasn't, Tiger Woods or
a lot of votes
Phil Mickelson.
For the Vanderbilt Legends Club on the golf course, by the way, on the text line. A lot of votes.
Well, the LPGA Tour used to do a tournament at Legends.
Yep. Exactly. So maybe you could just go back there with the PGA Tour.
I wonder why that hasn't happened.
I don't know. That's a good question.
You tell me.
Maybe that's something we could work on. Get a PGA Tour event here and now.
Yes.
I'd go follow some people for the holes for a couple days. Or maybe just sit at hole 15. I don't know what I'd do.
A PGA Tour event in this city would be
awesome.
Awesome. I would eat up every second of it.
Porth would be that guy who shouts when the guy hits the ball.
Oh, yeah. Get in the hole.
Baba Booey!
I don't think there's any
Porth would be
question about
escorted out of the PGA Tour event.
There's probably a...
I'd be that guy that accidentally left his flash on.
Yeah.
Taking a photo
Gets
and then
yelled at
Phil
by Tiger
Mickelson.
Woods.
Yeah.
You don't want that.
Got a text that says, wrestling is like a hit Broadway play. Come get down. I thought we were talking sports.
Ooh.
Shots fired.
Let's not go there again.
Porth, would you attend WrestleMania if it came to Nashville?
I don't know.
It's worth seeing.
Are the tickets free?
It's worth seeing.
I just asked if you'd go.
It's worth seeing in person at least once. And look, I know a lot of people think wrestling is corny, and you know what? It kind of is. But it is a lot of fun to attend. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, I recognize that. It's a lot of fun to attend in person. So I would, and it's insanely popular. Like.
Sure.
They are selling out football stadiums regularly. Several years ago, they set an attendance record at AT&T Stadium in Dallas.
I have no question.
They had more than 100,000 people in that stadium for WrestleMania.
I have no question it would do well here. I mean, I think WrestleMania would do very well here.
Yeah, I mean, because it's an international event, so you get a lot of people coming from out of the country to attend. And so it would be a good showcase of Nashville to a different sporting/entertainment audience.
Rainey on the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says the Frozen Four is such an underrated tournament. Would love for it to come to Nashville.
Yeah, that would.
I'd love to see it. I think
fun.
I think that's eventually going to happen.
Well, the Predators Bridgestone Arena was supposed to host a college game last fall, right? It was in North
Yep.
Dakota, and I can't recall who they were playing, but of course it was scrapped because of the pandemic. But yeah, certainly Nashville is becoming a hockey hotbed. We have seen the participation in hockey grow exponentially in Nashville over the past several years, and I absolutely believe that Nashville hockey fans, even if they are not fans of the teams participating in the Frozen Four, would absolutely attend Frozen Four games at Bridgestone Arena.
Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Ray from Brentwood, who wants to weigh in. Ray, thanks for calling into Robby and Rexrode.
My pleasure. I'm a big-time listener. You guys are great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. One of the events nobody mentioned, and they bring a party with them, is AVP Beach Volleyball. Volleyball is so big around here now. I think they could bring an event in here, and it would combine the party atmosphere with all the volleyball fans here. It'd be a no-brainer.
Hey, that sounds like a great idea. Thanks for calling in, Ray. We appreciate it. Where would you put it? Would you have the volleyball event
Percy Priest Lake
on Broadway? What do you do?
Nashville Shores.
I think a volleyball
Sound waves.
A volleyball tournament on Broadway would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd go watch.
Yeah.
Can you imagine getting into one of the honky tonks on the rooftop
And just
and
watching the volleyball
that?
tournament.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
we had Nate last week talk about playing a winter classic on Broadway. I don't know how that would work, but volleyball tournament I could see.
No
Yeah.
matter what you do on Broadway, you're going to have some sort of platform since
Oh,
it's
yeah.
all downhill.
Yeah, there's going to be some expert engineering going on. Out
Correct.
and on Twitter said the Sled Hockey World Championships.
there. Yeah,
That would be fun. Like I said, I think Nashville has become such a hotbed for hockey in general that non-Predators events would be well attended in Nashville, whether it was a sled championship or a Frozen Four. How about, do they have axe throwing competitions? Because that would be fun. Do they have an axe throwing league?
I'm sure they do.
I'm sure they do.
There's a league for everything.
World's Strongest Man competition.
we do have a vote for the X Games on the text line
Okay,
too.
X Games are cool. I would love to see a strong man pull a Mack truck down Broadway. Where they just pick up the rope and put it over their shoulders. And
I don't know how popular the World's Strongest Man competition.
Oh, come
would be
on,
here.
that would be fun.
You could start at the Hard Rock and end at what's at the top of the hill, Union Station Hotel.
Yeah.
That's a long
come
way
on.
to pull something. But yeah,
Wow.
You wouldn't want to
It's
see
the
that.
world's strongest man.
Yeah, you
They
wouldn't
can
want
do
to see
anything.
that. I would see. I would watch that. Yeah,
pulling a truck uphill.
X Games. Put a half pipe on Broadway.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
Apparently, Broadway is the location for a lot of these things.
Well, where else? would you
It's
put
a
it?
location
It's
for
a-
many things.
It's a location for many things.
It
Yeah,
is.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else off the top of my head. I think those are all great suggestions.
So what we've kind of discovered is the people want everything here. I mean, there's
On Broadway.
Yeah, the people want everything here. And look, we've gotten a lot of texts about the college football playoff. I'd love to see it. Probably number one on my list would be the college football playoff. Just you're going to need a roof to make that happen.
I'm amending.
I
my
would assume
previous
you're gonna make a
list. I'm amending my previous list because of Bob. I'm putting WrestleMania number one, and then an NCAA tournament, either Sweet 16, Elite 8 number 2.
Well, here's the thing, though, with college football playoff. If they don't do campuses
Yep.
for the 12 team for that first or second round, I mean,
You could.
You could have a
think
neutral
they
site
could
game here
become
for sure.
They could put themselves in the rotation
Sure.
for some of those, what would be 8-9, 7-10 type matchups.
I agree.
Would your Cincinnati Bearcats participate?
Of course.
Can you imagine
Preseason number 10 in the Phil
Can
Steele
you imagine
reasons.
Ryan Porth attending a college football playoff game featuring Cincinnati on Broadway at
No.
Nissan Stadium?
No, I can't. I cannot imagine.
He would need a babysitter.
I would.
Multiple babysitters.
I would.
Ethan from Lawrenceburg texting in, out of the box idea, the Bassmaster Classic will bring in a lot of people. We could really get things going.
Would that be on Old Hickory Lake or Percy Priest?
Probably
Why not?
Percy
Yeah.
Priest.
Why not both?
Good, yeah. I mean, you could just do it all of them.
You could. I have no idea
Tim's
how
Ford.
that tournament works, but you could have one bracket on Old Hickory. You could have the Old Hickory bracket and the Percy Priest bracket, if there's a bracket
Go
in
catch
this
some
event.
bass.
Yeah.
Maybe so.
Chad on Twitter says you guys are onto something with this World's Strongest Man competition on Broadway.
I agree.
That's what I'm saying. Who would not look, it's not for everybody, just like wrestling isn't it for everybody. But if you were to tell me that a strongman was going to pull like an 18-wheeler uphill on Broadway, I would absolutely go because I need to see this, freak act of strength with my own 4 eyes.
That or I guess watch something really gruesome about to happen on Broadway, one of the two. Yeah.
Well, that's every day
Well,
on Broadway.
well, you're right.
You don't need a
follow
World's
Scan
Strongest Man
Nashville on
competition.
Twitter.
Yes. My new favorite Twitter account over the weekend,
it
Nashville
was quite
Scanner.
active over this past weekend, this Nashville Scanner on Twitter. That was something to behold. Join 102.5 The Game today from 5 to 7 p.m. for the Nashville SC pre-match party at the Hard Rock Cafe downtown. Party before the match on Broadway and get some game swag, plus register to win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Nashville SC home game. Then head on over to Nissan Stadium for the 7:30 match. Get your tickets now for Nashville SC at NashvilleSC.com and tune into the match on ESPN 94.9. When we come back, our buddy Jason Fitz had some very interesting comments yesterday on Stillman and Company on how name, image, and likeness could benefit both Tennessee and Vanderbilt. We'll get to those coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Today, the Nashville Sounds play a doubleheader versus Gwinnett, the AAA affiliate of the Atlanta Braves. Game 1 will be on ESPN 94.9 with a 4:05 first pitch. Game 2 will be on 102.5 The Game at the conclusion of Game 1. Nashville Sounds Baseball presented by 312 Pizza Company. So make sure you're tuned in for that. A double dip today coming up for the Nashville Sounds. We'll come back in. Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Adam, your strongest man competition, it's gotten a lot of love. Somebody suggested they should host the World's Strongest Man competition in Nashville in front of the Parthenon at Centennial Park. You've done some research on the World's Strongest Man competition during the break. What have you found?
One of the events I was referencing, there are plenty of events, but the vehicle pull is the event I think most people are familiar with. And it appears, based on my quick research, that the vehicle that the strongmen pull, often has to do with the location of the event. So as Porth suggested, we can have a strongman pull one of those John Deere tractors with the wagons in the back full of, partiers uphill, up Broadway. Who would not want to watch that?
I suspect many people.
I would. The number one ranked strongman right now, by the way, is a man from Great Britain who is 6'8" and what, like 300.
You said 397.
397.
6'8", 397.
So who would not want to watch
play for the Titans?
Yeah, a 6'8", 400-pound man pull a tractor full of drunk people up Broadway?
The Titans are out there signing, basketball players and former wrestlers and all this other stuff. Why not go get
a strong man?
World's strongest man?
I think he'd be more productive than Isaiah Wilson as an offensive lineman.
Probably so. I'd say you're probably correct in that
assumption. Kick him while he's down.
I'd say you're probably correct in that assumption. We'll continue to take your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Tony Husband coming up at 9 o'clock to talk a little Nashville SC, a big game tonight, and a big move made yesterday by Nashville SC as well. Our buddy Jason Fitz, who works now at ESPN, used to work here at this station, was on with Stillman and Company yesterday and had some interesting comments on name, image, and likeness laws coming into effect and how Tennessee and Vanderbilt can take advantage of. That's the big question in today's world of college athletics. With name, image, and likeness coming into effect, how can these teams, how can these universities, and how can these athletes use this to their advantage? And Jason Fitz had an interesting point about how you could do that here locally, here both in Nashville and in the state as well. Here's what Jason Fitz had to say yesterday on with Stillman and Company.
Do you think if Vanderbilt decided to sell out, to hook the players up with everything that people love about Nashville, do you think they could do it?
Yes, 1,000%. But they'd have to be super aggressive about it. And I say that because one thing to remember, and you know this better than anybody, but it shook me. When I moved here in 97, 96, I was stunned that everybody was super into the Vols. And I was like, I don't understand it. Vandy's right here, and Tennessee's hours away. Like, it took me living here to talk to people and be like, oh, okay, so it's a generational thing. It's wired in the fabric. Like, if the Vols wanted to be super aggressive, I believe that they could make that same sales pitch. Say, hey, we're going to make sure that you rock like a king whenever you want to go to Nashville, which is only a few hours away. And by the way, we're going to make sure that you're the poster child for ads for Tootsies, whatever it might be. Like, I think Tennessee has that sort of inlaid groundwork if they want to take advantage of it with the bar owners in Nashville as well. I'm a little surprised that Vandy has never found a way to find the tie-in. And really, frankly, it's because they haven't had the passion for it in the past. We all know that. But the tie-in between Nashville and Vanderbilt should be so absolutely synergy related that at some point the two become synonymous with each other. Vandy's just never taken that step. And if they don't do it aggressively right now, my God, if I'm Tennessee, I'm doing that today, and I'm making sure that people understand that you be the king of Nashville every time you come into the city. So I actually think long-term it could benefit the Vols, who I believe will be more aggressive in getting it done.
So that was Jason Fitz on yesterday with Stillman and Company, and some interesting points brought up by Fitzy there. Look, when you look at the rest of the SEC, Nashville obviously is in a unique situation. There's not another town in the SEC that's like Nashville. Nashville stands alone there, which to Fitz's point there, that could be a really big weapon if you're Vanderbilt in this discussion with name, image, and likeness laws coming into effect. And I agree 100%. Like Tennessee, they're going to find a way to try and incorporate this if they can, because they know there is a huge Tennessee Vols fan base here in the Nashville area. It makes sense. There's so many different entertainment options, food options. I mean, the list goes on of things to do here in the Nashville area. You don't need me to tell you that. So, I mean, it stands to reason that Tennessee should take advantage of that. Vanderbilt should take advantage of that as well. Adam, so as you look at Nashville and with the name, image, and likeness laws now coming into effect. My question for you is, if you're Tennessee, if you're Vanderbilt, does this not feel like a huge opportunity that you have that really not many other teams in the SEC do? Like, look, players at Alabama and players in Georgia and Tuscaloosa and Athens, I mean, they're going to have endorsement opportunities. They're going to be able to make money because those fan bases are extremely passionate. Those businesses down there, they know that college football, it's the leader of the land down there. There are different things to do here. Pro sports are involved here as well. So it's not exactly the same situation here in this city. But this is a city with so many different options that it feels like Tennessee and Vanderbilt both, should they choose to explore those options with their players, should have a pretty big built-in advantage there.
Yeah, you would think that. Nashville is an entertainment capital in the United States. When you think about places that people want to come to, to have a good time, Nashville is right up there. I mean, think about all of the bachelor and bachelorette parties and all of the events that we were talking about in the previous segments. People want to be here. People want, to experience Nashville and be a part of Nashville. I mean, think about all of the, music executives and entertainment executives. Think about all of the companies that are coming here and setting up headquarters here in different fields. Yeah, I think Vanderbilt, especially as a team that is definitely not a SEC powerhouse, the facilities are not up to par, at least at the moment. The stadium, the training facilities, of course, you're getting an excellent education, but a lot of times when you like I remember seeing, the pictures of LSU's, football facility, like their dressing room is nicer than those of NFL teams.
Yeah.
The money, the resources that they pour in to making those players feel like professionals and feel like kings, to use Fitz's terms. Vanderbilt, that's the advantage they have. They may not have the competitive advantage in terms of on the field. They may not have the advantage in terms of the facilities they offer, the atmosphere they offer at games. But when you think about where they're located, it's hard to think of any other SEC school that has that built-in advantage. So, if I'm Candace Story-Lee and I'm Clark Lee, I am doing everything in my power to pitch that to players and recruits. The idea that if you come here, your options are limitless in terms of the name, image, and likeness opportunities that you can cash in on.
Well, and Porth, one of the things that's going to be interesting to me is, Vanderbilt, they're operating kind of on a different way of doing things now. You've got, the Vandy United Fund that they put together with the commitment to the facilities. You've got Clark Lee and his staff coming in, Barton Simmons along with that as the GM. Kind of a new way of doing things over there at Vanderbilt. And then you factor in name, image, and likeness laws coming into effect as well. Like, if I'm Vanderbilt, I'm viewing this as a huge opportunity. Like, I think this – and look, I don't know that Vanderbilt's ever going to be, Tennessee in terms of the fan base that they have or the resources that they're able to pour into their athletic programs. But this, in this city, this should be viewed as a huge, huge opportunity for Vanderbilt to get things done in a way that they've never been able to, and name, image, and likeness could be a huge weapon for them, I think.
100%. I mean, Jared Stillman in the last handful of days has made a good point of how Clark Lee would behoove him to get in tight with the bar scene on Broadway and country music stars and use those elements to recruit and say, hey, if you want backstage passes to all these concerts or get to meet Luke Combs or Luke Bryan or whomever, we've got your opportunity to do it here in Nashville. And no other SEC team has a market like Nashville where you can do all these other things in addition to playing football here. Yeah. And it is a way to take a step closer to being a consistent bowl team, maybe that kind of recruiting can lead to more James Franklin type seasons in the future. I don't think they'll ever be a consistent SEC championship contender. That would take a lot, but inching closer to being a relevant program in the SEC, this is a big avenue to get there.
Well, I view this as, there are certain schools I feel like have a lot to gain through this. Some, I think, it's not going to change all that much. Like, I don't think name, image, and likeness laws are really going to change the way Alabama operates all that much. They're getting all the top recruits anyway. They're going to continue to get a lot of the top recruits. It just is what it is. But in terms of opportunity, like Vanderbilt's got to be near the top of the list of places that there's so much to gain if you can take advantage of this the right way. So interested to see how Vanderbilt handles that on that front.
Well, real quick, you say that about Bama, but there could be one or two big recruits every year that don't go to Bama or Georgia because there are these opportunities elsewhere, and then all of a sudden you've got lower-level SEC teams finding themselves with better talent.
Could be.
Like Old Miss?
Yes.
Like
Adam
Miss.
Bingen's Old Miss.
Yes.
Lane Kiffin and company may be getting it done. When we come back, we'll be joined by Tony Husband, the TV voice of Nashville SC. A big game coming up tonight. A big acquisition yesterday as well. We'll get into all that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode live from the Wholesaling Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Final hour of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan in today for Joe Rexrode, who is on vacation. Ryan Porth with us as well on this Thursday morning in Nashville, SC. And it's been, or in Nashville, SC, Nashville, Tennessee. It's been a big 24 hours for Nashville, SC. They've got a huge game tonight coming up against Atlanta, a big acquisition made yesterday as well. And to help us talk more about that, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in the television voice of Nashville SC, Tony Husband. Tony, what's going on, man? How we doing? Thanks for taking time to join us.
No problem. It's great to be with you all. You talking to a very happy Englishman this morning in the soccer world.
Bet you are.
An absolute pleasure to talk to you, and looking forward to tonight. And well, I hope we're celebrating a little bit like us English soccer fans were last night.
Well, let's start right there then, Tony. What did you make of that game yesterday? A dramatic win for England in the Euros. As you said, I imagine that made you very happy yesterday to watch the end of that game.
Certainly was. And look, we English have been through an awful lot of pain when it comes to major tournaments down the years. We're kind of used to failure. We're kind of used to getting to that final hurdle and not getting over it. And, you know, people will talk about the penalty kick by which we won the game against Denmark. And look, I think it was a soft penalty. It's a penalty that, you know, sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. But if the penalty was a little unjustifiable, I don't think the result was unjustified. I think England deserved to win it just against a very, very decent Denmark team. But the really big challenge now comes up on Sunday against Italy. But I think, you know, I'm looking at and hearing from friends back in the UK, and, you know, there's a great mood there because it's just been a long wait. I think everyone's just thrilled to make it to a final. So there'll be a good pocket of English, though, here in Nashville on Sunday who will be watching that game, and very much looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Very much looking forward to that game coming up against Italy on Sunday. And, Tony, a big day yesterday for Nashville SC and their fans as well. Lots of friends texted me yesterday, very excited about the acquisition of Ake Loba from CF Monterey. What do you think he's going to add to this Nashville SC team? Obviously a natural center forward, though I think can also play on either wing as well. What do you think the acquisition of Loba will do for this Nashville SC squad?
In short, it'll make them better. Your key MO when you're trying to sign a player and when you're fishing in the kind of market and the kind of fees that players like Ake Loba are going for, and this is a club record fee by some distance.
Yeah.
You're looking for a player who's going to make a difference, who's going to make this team better. You're not just looking for someone who's a roster filler. So Loba, if he comes here and does everything that his potential and the metrics on him show, he will make this team better. He will make them more of an offensive threat. He will be another option for Gary Smith to throw up there in, you know, an expanding group of players up front. And he's a player, like you say, he can play down through the middle and be a striker threat, but he's also got the ability to play wide. He's done a little bit of playing on the flanks as well at Monterey, so he can cut in from the left-hand flank and play that way. So this is a guy who is humble from what I'm told. He's going to fit in well into the locker room, and that's really important when you're making a signing like this, a big-name signing coming into the club with a lot of attention on him. He's going to fit in with the group well. And while you never know how a big signing will pan out in the long term. You know, if we did, everybody would pick up the perfect signing every time. But I think Mike Jacobs and his team have done all the homework they can, and all the factors and would point towards Loba being an important addition, and an addition who can succeed in Major League Soccer and with Nashville.
Tony, this has been such an interesting season so far for Nashville SC because, you know, 4 wins, just the 1 loss so far on the year and 6 draws as well. But their ability to come back in these games. I remember the first couple of games of the season, they fall behind 2-0. They fight their way back in and end up with a couple of draws as a result. But they've been able to come back in these games all season long and come up with big plays in big moments. What have you made of that, and what do you think that says about this team, the culture that Gary Smith has created, their ability to never truly be out of a game so far this year?
Yeah, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there. This tells you everything about a culture, doesn't it? You know, if a team can produce performances like that and continually come back, continually feel like they are never out of a game, never give up on a fight back, whatever minute we're getting to, and it's stoppage time twice now, they've pulled out points, and a win against Toronto, a tie against Montreal. We had those games early in the season as well where they fought back. It says a lot about the culture in the team. Look, it's not the ideal situation because actually this team is at its best when it goes in front in games because they very, very rarely give anything away if they get their noses in front in matches. So, you know, let's not get it wrong. I don't want to keep seeing this team falling behind, and they've fallen behind too many times this season. And Gary Smith knows that himself. But, hey, it's a good quality that you've got if, when you do fall behind, you've got that quality and that character that just drives this team. And together with the backing of the fans inside the stadium, which I think you shouldn't underestimate either, the noise they make just gives you a feeling that, you cannot ever count Nashville out. And that's a great quality to have.
Nashville SC television voice, also host of NSC Backstage. Tony Husband on the line with us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And Tony, obviously tonight, taking on Atlanta at Nissan Stadium. You can hear that match at 7:30 coming up tonight between Nashville SC and Atlanta United. What do you think of this matchup for Nashville SC, and what do you think of kind of the Nashville-Atlanta rivalry that continues to evolve as these teams get more and more familiar with each other?
Yeah, well, I'm still getting used to the fact that, a team 3 hours away is local, because coming from England where we have a great concentration of teams and you know what a local derby is there. But, yeah, I mean, this is an emerging rivalry in MLS, isn't it? There's a good rivalry between both sets of fans. I mean, I think Atlanta fans always like to remind Nashville fans that, a lot of them traveled up to that very first game, 29th of February, 495 days ago that was, that memorable night here, with the 59,000 fans watching the inaugural MLS match. But, of course, Atlanta fans will always want to remind Nashville supporters that they got the win on that occasion. Broadly, since then, Nashville have done pretty well in this fixture. I mean, when Atlanta came back after the restart in September last season and played here, I mean, they were well beaten. But sadly, it was in front of an empty stadium. So tonight, to me, feels like a real big moment because this feels like the first real proper kind of clash back in Music City between these two teams. I think it's a really important game for Nashville. I mean, they're always important. Of course, it's the same 3 points are on the line every game. I'll tell you why I think it's really important. 5 straight home games for Nashville in this little run. And that was so important Nashville get a good points return on that. Now, so far, they've taken 2 wins and a tie from the first 3. They got an informed Chicago team to come here next week. And tonight they have a below-par Atlanta team, missing players for internationals, for the Olympics, and also injuries. There could be 8 or 9 Atlanta regulars not in their starting 11 tonight. Now, Nashville are missing players as well. They'll be without Walker Zimmerman, Alistair Johnston, Annabelle Godoy. But Gary Smith has got more options available to him on his roster than probably Gabriel Heinze has on his. Now, if Nashville get a win tonight, that's back-to-back victories. And soccer coaches will tell you a lot about the importance of getting 2 consecutive wins. And if they do that tonight, they'll then go into that Chicago game off the back of 3 wins and a draw out of 4 at home. Now, I'm not saying then that makes the Chicago game a kind of free hit. It doesn't really matter what happens. But it puts you in a really good spot, and it's a really good points return for a team that's always known it's got to do well at home in this early stage of the season, because it's going to spend most of the end of the season on the road where we know things are difficult. So they've got to get as high up those Eastern Conference standings as they can, because it's going to be a tough fall. Now, I back this team to do okay on the road, but still, the evidence is always there. MLS teams, it's difficult on the road, long distances, time zones, whatever.
So, Tony, Nashville SC in a good spot right now, currently in 5th place with 18 points in the Eastern Conference. 4-1-6 on the season, as I mentioned earlier. Now, as you said, they've got to start playing with the lead a little bit more, and certainly things to improve on as they continue to go and move along here. But what do you make of the situation that they're in right now, 5th in the Eastern Conference? How good of a spot is Nashville SC in your mind at this moment?
I think they're in a pretty good spot. I mean, this is going to be an interesting few weeks now because there are some big characters missing from the locker room away on international duty. So, with Walker Zimmerman not there, with Annabelle Godoy not there next to Dax McCarthy in midfield, and Alistair Johnston, who's been such a revelation, the right back, is off playing for Canada in the Gold Cup as well. So, I can't say you're not going to miss players like that. You're always going to miss players of that quality. But what's encouraging is that with the likes of Zimmerman, within knowing that Zimmerman was going to be away, they brought Jack Mayer back in. They sent him out on loan to San Diego, got him some game time, and the first-round draft pick from last year has come in, and he's slotted in seamlessly into this group. And that's so important. So with Zimmerman out, you've got a very, very dependable replacement who's come in Mayer. Likewise, Brian Anunga, who looked really good in pre-season, got an injury, set him back a little bit, has worked his way back to fitness. The likes of him are going to have a big part to play alongside Dax McCarthy in that midfield. But he's ready to seize that opportunity. And again, going back to what we were talking about with the spirit in the team, that togetherness that they have, then you feel that the likes of Anonga can excel given the opportunity and will be confident. And then we throw in Loba because, Loba won't be around tonight, but he all being well, could be potentially available as soon as next week. We'll have to wait and see on documentation and all sorts and when he's available to actually start for the club. But throw Loba into that mix, and you've got another good option in the next few weeks up front as well, which can help share the load for the strikers up front, because that's an area where they have been a little bit hit by injuries and unavailability. CJ Sapong carrying the load a lot at the moment. John Nicadiz is now back from the Copa America, but they still got Dominic Bargi out injured, and Daniel Rios has had an injury hit start to the season as well. So good options, lots of reasons to be optimistic. I'm feeling good about these next few weeks, but they're a big few weeks for the team, no doubt about that.
Tony Husband, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. And Tony, I know that NSC Backstage is now underway, and you can check that out every Monday night on ESPN 94.9. Got Mike Jacobs, general manager of Nashville SC, coming up this Monday, and you can check it out online as well via Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and theGameNashville.com. What's it been like with you and Jamie Watson with NSC Backstage, brought to you by Camarena Tequila?
Absolutely, yeah. It's been absolutely fantastic because, we've had this, really difficult year with the pandemic and everything that, the challenges that everyone's faced. And, hey, look, it's no real big issue, whether you miss being in a radio studio or not. But, I hadn't been in a radio studio, broadcast behind the mic, put the cams on for, some 14 months, 15 months or something. And it was just such a buzz to be back in at the station, broadcasting from the studios there. We've had a couple of great additions. Jamie's great fun to work with, and so we've had great conversation with Dax McCarthy in week 1. We had Gary Smith in week 2 telling us this remarkable story of how he actually watched Nashville SC's first ever Major League Soccer victory, which was across the street drinking a beer at his neighbor's house because Gary had been unable to travel to the game due to COVID protocols. And then he couldn't find the right TV channel on his own TV, so he ran across the street and watched it with some Nashville fans across the street. So just great stories, and it's that kind of thing, those kind of things you hear about that, maybe they don't always make the news that, we enjoy bringing to you on NSC Backstage. And as you say, this week on Monday night we'll have Mike Jacobs, and it's a great moment to speak to Mike, obviously, because we'll be able to get a little bit more insight, background on the Ake Loba deal, how someone like Mike Jacobs works the channels to set these deals up, to make them happen, to fight off the competition, and to make Nashville the destination of choice for these transfer targets of his. So Mike will give us, I'm sure, some really good insight on that. And he's a big NBA man, so I'm sure we'll be keen to find out what he thinks is going on in the NBA playoffs as well, in the final.
That's right, and you can check that out coming up this Monday on ESPN 94.9 from 7 to 8 p.m. Tony Husband, a part of that great coverage on NSC Backstage alongside Jamie Watson as well. Tony, appreciate you so much taking time to join us this morning, and looking forward to the game tonight for Nashville SC against Atlanta.
Yeah, fellas, great to talk to you, and enjoy the coverage tonight, whether you're going to be at the game. Love to see as many fans as possible at the game, but if not, listening to your great coverage, of course, on ESPN 94.9, and if you're in front of a television, we're on my TV 30 as well from 7.
That's right. Tony Husband, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. Appreciate him taking time to join us this morning here on the show, and it is time for NSC Pick to Click, brought to you by Camarena Tequila as well. Your opportunity to guess the goal scorer for tonight's game between Nashville SC and Atlanta. Be the first caller at 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. If you guess the goal scorer correctly, you'll win a prize pack brought to you by Camarena Tequila and a 4-pack of tickets to an upcoming Nashville SC home game. We'll do that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game.
It's hooked in and headed in. Delirium. Yonder Cadiz.
Who's going to find the back of the net in the upcoming Nashville SC match? Robby and Rexrode make their picks to click for the match and welcome a listener to do the same. NSC Pick to Click on ESPN 1025 The Game is brought to you by Camarena Tequila.
And it is that time of the day. Time for NSC Pick to Click, brought to you by Camarena Tequila. Nashville SC at home tonight at Nissan Stadium, taking on Atlanta United. As Tony Husband said in the last segment, pretty good rivalry developing between Nashville SC and Atlanta United in the MLS. And we've got your opportunity now to guess the goal scorer tonight for Nashville SC and Atlanta United as well. If you guess the goal scorer correctly, you will win a prize pack brought to you by Camarena Tequila. Also, a 4-pack of tickets to an upcoming Nashville SC home game as well. Now, Adam Vingan, I know you're fired up because this is your first edition of NSC Pick to Click as well. So how excited are you on a scale of 1 to 10? I have confidence in you.
I'm very excited.
Well, we need your...
I've never picked to click before.
I guess if you get it right tonight, you will go in the standings category with Joe Rexrode, since you're filling in with Joe Rexrode.
Yes.
And the standings currently are as such. Joe Rexrode has 1 correct answer so far this year in NSC Pick to Click. The listeners have 1 correct answer as well in NSC Pick to Click. And Ryan Porth and myself remain shut out in this competition. Not yet on the board, so very much shaping up to be like Pred's Pick to Click as well, where Porth and I continue to be behind the entire time.
Which player did Joe select that was correct? Do you recall?
I believe... I want to say it was Hani Mukhtar, but I can't remember for sure. But I want to say it was Mukhtar. So we'll have to see what happens on that front. Without further ado, let's go to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Josh from Ashland City, who is today's participant in NSC Pick to Click. Josh, how's it going? Thanks for calling in to Robby and Rexrode.
Hey, how y'all guys doing?
We're doing good. Appreciate you taking time to join us. So, Josh, Nashville SC taking on Atlanta tonight at Nissan Stadium. Who is your pick to click tonight for Nashville SC?
I want to go with my gut and say Randall Leal, but I kind of want to go with Hani Mukhtar. I'm going with Hani Mukhtar.
There you go. There we go. Hani Mukhtar selected tonight by Josh. Josh, appreciate you taking time to call in.
Thank you, fellas.
So Mukhtar off the board. Josh has selected Mukhtar in the competition. Adam Vingan, since it is your first edition of NSC Pick to Click, I now turn it over to you. Who is your pick to click tonight for Nashville SC taking on Atlanta United?
Well, Mukhtar is the safe choice, and the listener took Mukhtar.
Yep.
I'm checking out the statistics here, and I don't want to butcher anybody's names. And tell me, I just want to make sure because there are multiple players who will not be available.
Yep.
CJ Sapong, is he available?
Available.
I will take him.
Okay.
I just have a feeling.
You got to go. Hey, look, that's what this competition is. It's a gut feeling. You got to see if you can make it work at that point.
Did I pronounce his name correctly?
You did.
Okay.
Well done. So Sapong off the board as well, taken by Adam Vingan in his inaugural edition of NSC Pick to Click. I will go with Old Faithful tonight, and that is Randall Leal. Josh said he was thinking about taking Leal, but thought better of it, took Hani Mukhtar. So Josh and I in direct opposition against each other tonight. Give me Randall Leal to score a goal tonight for Nashville SC taking on Atlanta United, which means, Ryan Porth, you are bringing up the rear in this competition. You have the final selection in NSC Pick to Click. Remember, Walker Zimmerman not available tonight due to international competition. So don't pick him. So
I'm not picking him.
All right.
I'm going with the captain.
All right.
Dax McCarty. He scored against Atlanta.
He did
last season,
and friend of the show on NSC Backstage.
That is correct. The inaugural guest. He has been getting closer. He's got 4 shots in the last 2 games.
So you're going with the captain.
I'm going with the captain.
So Dax McCarty selected by Ryan Porth in this competition. Gentlemen, good luck. That is today's edition of NSC Pick to Click, brought to you by Camarena Tequila. Some standings, a battle on the board. So we'll see if Ryan Porth or myself can get on the board tonight with Nashville SC taking on Atlanta United.
I better get credit from Rexrode if CJ Sapong scores.
I'm sure you will.
And adds to his total because I am filling in.
I'm sure he'll give you credit.
I would hope so.
Adam, the Tampa Bay Lightning last night win their second consecutive Stanley Cup, a 1-0 win, a shutout win once again for the Tampa Bay Lightning and Andrei Vasilevskiy to close out a series, his fifth consecutive shutout to close out a series in a row, which is, at this point, by far an NHL record. And you said something earlier, which I think actually may be true. I'm not sure that we'll ever see a goalie do this again. 5 consecutive shutouts to close out a playoff series. That's insane what Andrei Vasilevsky's been able to do. And he is the Conn Smythe Trophy winner for the playoff MVP. And I think there's a couple different options you could have gone with for the Tampa Bay Lightning. But at the end of the day, I mean, when he's done what he's been able to do, Andrei Vasilevskiy would have received my vote for the Conn Smythe, and I was happy to see him win it because I thought he deserved it.
Yeah, we talked with Jeff Marek yesterday, and I asked him if the Lightning won last night, who he would give his Conn Smythe vote to, and he made the case for Nikita Kucherov. Now, I was fortunate enough to vote for the Conn Smythe in 2017 when the Predators played the Penguins. I can't recall who my vote went to. I think it might have gone to Malkin. But Crosby won, if I'm not mistaken.
They did.
But those votes are submitted before the end of the game so that they can, of course, announce it when Gary Bettman takes the ice.
By the way, did y'all see the celebration last night? Like the Stanley Cup trophy presentation?
That was weird.
It was weird, wasn't it?
When they brought them all together.
Yeah. And
before handing the cup to Steven Stamkos.
Gary Bettman is like narrating in the middle of the team picture.
I don't know. I was like, usually he gets in there, he says like, 2 lines and shuts up, hands the Stanley Cup off, and that's it.
He didn't make a joke about being booed.
No.
Well,
there's none of that.
Lightning fans tried to boo him.
They couldn't.
And once he brought up Vasilevskiy, they went nuts.
Started cheering.
But the other weird thing that Bettman always does but didn't do last night was congratulate Montreal.
Yeah.
Whenever he hands out the Stanley Cup, he's always like, first, before we do this, let's give a warm applause for the runner-up to this event.
Yeah.
And he
was intimidated by Shea Weber staring
no respect for Shea Weber.
He comes out to award the cup, and he's like, back-to-back Stanley Cups, the Tampa Bay Lightning, Steven Stamkos, let's do this again.
And then he's like, let's do this like we did it last year. Bring everyone up. And then he went on like a 5-minute soliloquy by himself. And then finally we got to Steven Stamkos receiving the trophy.
Yeah.
But it was interesting.
I'm glad that they didn't do the sparklers. Like the photo that came out of that in 2019 when Alex Pietrangelo lifted the cup and it had like the little fireworks behind him. I mean, it made for a nice picture, but I also thought it was kind of corny. So I'm glad they didn't do that again. But as I was saying, the votes for Conn Smythe go in, right after the game. You submit them at the buzzer, basically, or even before that.
Thought it was 10 minutes left in the third period.
Yeah, it's before the end of the game. And ultimately, if the Conn Smythe would have been awarded after the press conferences, it would have gone to Nikita Kucherov.
Probably so.
Can we play that again before the end of the show? Oh.
We cannot.
But people might not have heard it at the beginning of the show.
Well, you can check it out. We have podcasts for that.
Oh.
You can go back and check it out.
Please go listen to
if
it.
you missed it. As Pete Blackburn on Twitter says, the most likable thing about the Lightning is that they denied Corey Perry the Stanley Cup in back-to-back years. So there you go.
That is true. Corey Perry still with just one
does
Stanley
have one.
Cup.
Corey Perry denied once again last night. Congrats to Shea Weber in Montreal on a great season, but Tampa Bay firmly entrenching themselves as one of the great teams that we've seen certainly in the salary cap era to this point. When we come back, we'll get into the Predators. What should the next contracts look like for Matthias Ekholm and Philip Forsberg? Should they give contracts to both Matthias Ekholm and Philip Forsberg? We'll get to that coming up next. Taking your thoughts as well on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming live on YouTube, on Periscope, and on Twitch as well. Taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. We discussed the Tampa Bay Lightning winning the Stanley Cup last night, their second consecutive Stanley Cup championship. Ben texting in on the text line saying, after watching the rest of the playoffs, the Preds have got to get more talented on like half the roster. I don't think there's any question. You watch that Tampa Bay Lightning team play and just not any holes. I tweeted this out last night, and I know that people are going to get mad about the salary cap and the $18 million over and all that stuff that, by the way, is within the NHL rules, so it's not like this is just strictly a Tampa Bay thing. And if memory serves, didn't they visit this after the 2015 season with the Blackhawks when they did that with Patrick Kane? It wasn't Tampa Bay like the only team to be like, hey, why don't we try to change this? And now they've taken advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's within the rules. It absolutely was within the rules, and it's one of those situations where if it happens with your team,
you don't care.
You don't care. If the Predators were in the same situation with a similar player, and the Predators won the Stanley Cup, and everybody was saying, "Well, they're $18 million over the salary cap," you would be jumping for joy and calling everybody a sore loser.
Is that your grumpy fan voice?
Yeah, so Rexrode and I have our voices when we talk about the fans.
Yes.
Frank has mentioned that in previous shows.
Yes, Frank did ask for that yesterday on the text
It's called
line.
The Voice.
Yep.
And it's something like, the Tampa Bay Lightning shouldn't have been allowed to win the Stanley Cup, $18 million over the salary cap. You know, whatever.
That's well done. I like that.
Thank
you.
The
Voice by
Voice.
Adam Vingan. Heidi from Dixon texting in on the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Re-signing some guys that played well is fine, and young guys getting more ice time and growing is fine. But how can we actually make this team better? Running back most of these guys doesn't give much hope for next year, and that leads to an interesting spot for the Predators with Matthias Ekholm and Philip Forsberg. So both of those guys, 1 year left on their deal. They'll be under contract next season for the Predators and eligible to be signed to an extension, I believe starting on July 28th is when they're eligible to sign a contract extension with the Predators. Matthias Ekholm, obviously very heavily rumored to be in trade rumors around the deadline last year, and then the Predators started to play better. He was, of course, a huge part of that with Roman Josi being injured at the time as well, and David Poile with some strong comments at the deadline saying the next conversation that he was going to have with Matthias Ekholm was not going to be about trading him. It was going to be about whether or not he was interested in signing a contract extension. So obviously some interest for the Predators to have Ekholm re-signed, interest to get Forsberg signed as well. My question for you, Adam Vingan, is as you look at potential contract extensions for Matthias Ekholm and Philip Forsberg, number one, is it a good idea to extend them both? Some people think not. Some people think maybe you ought to let one of the two of them walk and start to rebuild and construct the roster from a younger point of view that way. And if it is a good idea, in your opinion, number two, what do you think those contracts could look like for both Matthias Ekholm and Philip Forsberg?
When we talked about this earlier, one of the texters said that the Predators should trade Philip Forsberg before the season if he isn't signed by then. You know, to me, as I said then, if the Predators trade Philip Forsberg, to me that is the closest thing to signifying not quite a full-scale rebuild, easy for me to say, but pretty close to it, or as close as the Predators are going to get. When I look at the contracts, you know, it's one thing that we often do is we look at other players with similar statistics and similar roles and determine, you know, whether or not those contracts are comparable to the ones that, you know, the players that need a new contract should sign. And earlier I talked about a couple of contracts, 3 contracts specifically for Matthias Ekholm that stood out to me. Jeff Petrie of the Montreal Canadiens, Jake Muzzin of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Jonas Brodin of the Minnesota Wild. Both Petrie and Muzzin are signed to 4-year contracts. I believe it was $6 million or close. I think it was $6 million or $6.5 million for Petrie and $5.625 for Muzzin. I might have those confused. Either way, it was, you know, a 4-year, $24 million contract for Matthias Ekholm, I think, would be reasonable for both sides. For the Predators, I think they should avoid signing their older players to any more long-term contracts. They've got enough of those. They've got Roman Josi, they've got Ryan Ellis, they've got Ryan Johansson, they have Matt Duchene.
Yep.
You could even throw Colton Sissons in there. I mean, he's in his late 20s, but he's signed for 5 more years. I think they should avoid that. I think a 4-year, $24 million contract would be great for Ekholm. It would be a significant raise from 3.75 to 6. It would keep him around for the rest of his, he's technically out of his prime, but it would keep him around for, probably the remaining of his best years without committing too much to him. Philip Forsberg is an interesting case. Philip Forsberg to me is not an $8 million player. To me, his ceiling at this point is probably 7.5, maybe 7.75. I would sign him to a contract 4 or 5 years at 7.5. That would probably be my limit. There's more work to be done in terms of digging into how exactly that contract should look, what that contract should look like. The goal for the Predators this offseason should be to get at least one of those players under contract before training camp. It does not have to be both, but it can't be neither. I think it has to be one, and as we discussed earlier, I think it is more likely that it's Matthias Ekholm than Philip Forsberg.
And obviously an age difference as well. I mean, we all know how important Matthias Ekholm has been for this group, and it always kind of feels like there's one Predators defenseman that's underrated, and I think the last couple of years it's probably been Matthias Ekholm. I don't know that that's the case anymore. I think most people around the league at this point recognize how good Matthias Ekholm is.
Yep.
But he is 31. Philip Forsberg is 26. So there's a difference there, obviously with the positions that they play, but in the age difference as well. So I don't know that an 8-year contract would even be on the table for Matthias Ekholm given his age. So I think that contract is going to be relatively simple for the Predators to work out. I think I've got a pretty high amount of confidence that the Ekholm contract gets done. The Forsberg one to me is interesting because he's got 1 year left on his deal. He can become an unrestricted free agent next year. We talked last week about, the Victor Arvidsson trade. Obviously, Forsberg wasn't happy. I don't think that just automatically means he's like, you know what? I'm done with the Predators. They traded Victor Arvidsson. I don't want to sign here. I don't think it means that at all. I think Philip Forsberg likes playing in Nashville. I think in a perfect world he would like to finish his career with the Predators. But I do think if you're Forsberg, you've got to look around and kind of read the room a little bit of what's the rest of this offseason going to look like? What more moves are coming down the pike? How does this team change with the expansion draft? Are there any more trades that get made this offseason? There's a lot of things left, I think, still to be accomplished by David Poile that if I'm Philip Forsberg, I want to see before I am comfortable signing an extension with this team. And that can come back and burn you. I mean, you can be an unrestricted free agent. If Forsberg goes out and gets hurt this year and he has a bad year, you probably wish you would have signed an extension at that point. So you're betting on yourself, essentially, if you don't do that. But I still believe if I'm Forsberg, there are probably some steps that I want to see taken this offseason by David Poile and the Predators to convince me that they're moving in the right direction as a team and that you're not about to enter into a 3 or 4 year process where you're trying to get back to being a Stanley Cup contender.
Right. There is risk involved for either side by not signing a contract. If the Predators say, prove it, and Philip Forsberg goes out there and does, then you're paying him a lot more than maybe you wanted. If Philip, as he has shown in the past couple of years, is incapable of staying healthy and has a down season, well, his value just went down. We talked about this earlier as well. You do not want to have a repeat of the Ryan Suter situation from close to a decade ago. You want to make sure that if it is clear that Philip Forsberg is not in the Predators' plans, whether that's his decision or the team's decision, by the trade deadline. I don't think he has to be under contract at the beginning of the season or else. But if you're getting to midseason, if you're getting close to the trade deadline next season and he's still not under contract, I think you have to consider it. Seriously trading him. Philip Forsberg, as we've discussed, an incredibly talented player, has the tools to be better than he has shown statistically in his career. At this stage, he's still young. He's 26, so there's still time for him to grow a little bit. but I think we've kind of reached a point where we know what Philip is.
And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
He's a really good player.
Yes, but Philip Forsberg, his ceiling is probably in an 82-game season a 30-goal, 60-point guy.
Yeah.
Which is not bad, but Philip Forsberg is not going to be Steven Stamkos. He's not going to be Nikita Kucherov. He's not going to be Nathan McKinnon. He's not going to be Brad Marchand. He's not going to be, name your top forward. Like, he is not going to be a top-tier forward in this league, most likely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And speaking of that, that leads to kind of a broader discussion with the Predators, the top-tier forwards. That's been a problem for the Predators to identify and develop throughout the history of their franchise. How does that improve? How do the Predators solve the problem of not landing the elite forwards in the NHL? We'll get to that coming up next. Get to your thoughts as well on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Welcome back in. Final segment of the day here on Robby and Rexrode, ESPN 1025 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Adam Vingan, Ryan Porth here with you on this Thursday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, discussing the Nashville Predators and the lack of ability to find an elite forward. Now, the Predators, they've had a lot of very good forwards throughout the history of their franchise. They've got a lot of very good forwards right now. Ryan Johansson's been a very good forward Philip Forsberg has been a very good forward. They have gone up and down the list throughout the history of their franchise of good forwards. They've really had, in my opinion, Adam, one guy that's been elite, and that was Paul Kariya. Obviously a Hall of Fame player, still has the single-season record for points with 85 points in the 05-06 season, his first season after he signed here in free agency. So Paul Kariya played at a high level, very good player for the Nashville Predators, but he's really the only guy that I think approaches the elite category at the forward position throughout the history of the Predators franchise. Why do you think it's been so problematic for the Predators to find that? And at Gators_Z on Twitch says, is it possible to have elite players at different levels of the game? Seems like if you have great players in 2 of the 3 facets of the game, then you have to have a side that would be considered weaker. So the Predators, to that point, they've had a lot of elite defensemen. They've had some elite goaltenders that have walked through here as well. Not been able to find the forwards. Do you buy into the way you build your team? Sometimes it's hard. I mean, it's almost impossible to have 3 areas where you've got elite players.
Well, the
Tampa Bay Lightning would disagree, by the way.
The Predators have always been a team that has built from the back end.
Yep.
Goaltending and defense. And we can list off the goaltenders and defensemen that have played for the Predators, who were drafted by the Predators specifically, who have gone on to have excellent careers. But, the forward side of things has always been an issue. And it is, among the biggest questions about this team. And there's no simple answer. The one thing I've pointed out many times on today's show is that when you look up and down the Lightning's forward roster, the majority of their top players were either drafted by the organization or signed as undrafted free agents.
Yep.
And that, that goes a long way. Teams, the championship teams in the NHL are, at least in the salary cap era, are rarely built through trades and free agency. The core, the top players are often homegrown talent. And the Predators have that on the back end, starting with Roman Josi and UC Saros, who, of course, was the team's MVP down the stretch. Another homegrown player, and Pecorine, of course. So to the texter's point, it hasn't been an issue at 2 of the 3 positions. But as we've seen in recent history, the top teams have that one player up front, or multiple in the case of the Lightning, who can take over a game. The Predators do not have that player. They have players who can do that in spurts. We've seen Philip Forsberg do it from time to time. Ryan Johansson has done it from time to time, but not consistently enough. You can always count on someone like Nikita Kucherov or Braden Point or Steven Stamkos, to be there for their team when they need them. So, I went extreme earlier in the show and said that the only true avenue to getting one of those forwards is to tank. Porth disagreed, but like what I mentioned earlier, if you take the top 10 forwards in the NHL this season and sort them by points and look at where they were drafted, 9 of the 10 were first-round picks. And all 9 were, I think, top 10 selections. So that's where they come from. That's where they come from.
I would say that's the best way to do it, but not the only way.
No, I would agree. It's not the only way, but it's probably the I wasn't going to say the most surefire way, because there are plenty of players drafted at the top that don't pan out. But the track record suggests that's the way to go.
All right, we got a lot of text to roll through here on the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Got a texter that says, curious as to what Robby and Adam think Philip Tomasino's upside is. So we're talking about elite forwards, finding those through the draft. Predators fans very excited about Philip Tomasino. I think he's going to make the team out of training camp next year. What do we think the upside for Tomasino is at this point?
Well, I think it was a blessing in disguise that the OHL season didn't happen this season, because Philip Tomasino, who would have been ineligible to play in the AHL, got an opportunity to play in the AHL, and he was great. He had 32 points in 29 games. He was an AHL He was named to the AHL All-Rookie team. He's playing right wing. He was drafted as a center, but it appears he'll be a right wing in the professional ranks. What is his upside? I'm not really sure. I mean, it's hard to tell based off of one AHL season. You hope that Philip Tomasino can become one of these forwards that we're talking about. He's young. He's 19 years old. He's got a lot of room to grow. I think he can be a very dynamic player. Is he that can't-miss guy that becomes the face of the franchise? Who knows? But I think he can be a very good player for this team.
I think so, too. Look, the one thing that stands out about him when I watch him, it's a couple things. Number one, he's got great speed.
Yes.
He can skate very well. He's not the biggest guy. He's 19 years old, so there's still some room to grow there. Philip Forsberg, when he came in, he had to do some growing as well,
yes,
physically. So that story is still yet to be written. I love the speed, and I think the vision, the playmaking ability that he has is very good. So the upside, I think, is that he turns into a very, very good top six forward for your team. Is he going to be an elite level forward? I don't know about that. I would be surprised if he ever gets into the Braden Point or the Nikita Kucherov category, but I think he could be a very, very good player. Mm-hmm. I'm also interested, it seems like he's going to be a winger at this point.
Yes.
They drafted him as a centerman, so he's played down the middle, but it seems like he's kind of making that transition to playing on the wing, and I'm interested, does that continue with the Predators? Does he eventually get to the point where they put him down the middle, or do they keep him on the wing? That's going to be pretty fascinating to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, and you could certainly see him play on the right wing in the top six this season if he impresses in training camp, but it's also good to know that he has the ability to play center depending on the changes that happen with the team in the coming years. But I think Predators fans should be excited. Of course, a lot of Predators fans were excited about Eeli Tolvanen, and for a while it didn't work out that way. But I think Tomasino, like I said, blessing in disguise that he got to play in the AHL.
Adam, it's been fun having you in this week, my man.
Thanks for having me, everybody.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed it. You'll have David Beauclair.
That's right.
Alongside tomorrow. Always enjoy hearing what David has to say. And then Joe will be back from vacation next week. So, yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed getting the opportunity to practice getting up early with a baby on the way.
That's right. That's what we're here for.
4:45 wake-up calls. But, yeah, I had a lot of fun.
We appreciate you coming in the last couple of days. And Adam Vingan, friend of the show from The Athletic, now fellow co-host of the show as well the last few days here on the program. Ryan Porth doing his hand signals behind the glass as we speak, furthering the evidence that Joe Rexrode threw out there that we need a camera on Ryan Porth at all times. Adam, we'll see if the World's Strongest Man competition listens to you and finds their way here into Nashville, Tennessee. If so, I think you can really call the last couple of days for you a success.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I forgot to do before I left for the week was bring Porth some Lunchables based on our discussion.
We can get that done. Get a little Lunchable action.
I'm still going to be here for the rest of the week, and you know where we are.
That's true.
That is true.
You can bring some Lunchables that way. That's for sure.
Like Pete Weber delivering KFC.
That's
I'll
right.
just buy all of the Lunchables at Kroger and just have them delivered to you.
Sweet.
That's right.
Looking forward to it.
That does it for us here today. As Adam said, David Beauclair will be in with me tomorrow from SI.com, so looking forward to that. Darren Dodick and Chase